Radio 418.
What's up, beautiful people? This is John Montagna, and you're listening to Radio 418. This is a very special episode of the podcast for a number of reasons. Normally, I'm having a one-on-one conversation with one of my fellow musicians about the life in music. But the life in music does not only apply to musicians. My guest today is Maria Milito, veteran rock radio personality here in New York. New York rock radio listeners are going to recognize her voice from her years at K-Rock and now on Q104.3 FM. I've known Maria for quite a while. She's introduced a bunch of our gigs here in New York at BB King's and the City Winery and places like that. And I've always wanted to talk to her about her business, the classic rock radio business, because rock and roll radio really helped shape a lot of who I am as a musician. When I was growing up, I was a huge fan of WNEW-FM 102.7. And I used to listen to Scott Muni and Ken Dashow and Pat St. John. These are all New York-centric radio personalities, but every city in the country has its own local radio flavor. But in any case, today I listen to classic rock on Q104.3 FM. That's where Ken Dashow is. And that's where Maria is today. And that's where this interview took place. Maria invited my wife, Jill, and I up to the Q104 studios in New York City. And I wanted Jill with me on this interview. Say hello, baby.
Hello, baby.
Yeah. So Jill's been in the media business for 25 years, and she speaks the language of radio, and she knows that business inside and out. And I wanted her to be involved in this interview just because I'm curious, like I said, about the radio industry, especially the way that the entire entertainment landscape is changing today. So I want to let Jill introduce this conversation, baby. Why did you want to join me on this?
Well, because I'm a total radio geek. I started my career in radio. I love radio. I think it's still a great format. I don't think it's ever going to really go anywhere. I think people share this love that I have of radio. So I was very excited. I knew I had to get in on this conversation when you arranged it. And I'm a huge fan of Maria's. What I want people to understand is that she's not just a DJ. She's a veteran, a heritage radio personality in the number one market in the country, which is New York. The New York market covers not just New York, but New Jersey, Long Island, parts of Connecticut. And she's really in touch with her listeners because she loves the music and she's connected and talks to her listeners. And that's how she keeps her music fresh. And that's how she's been on the air for over 20 years in middays in New York City. And the thing is, not only is she in the number one market, but she's on the only classic rock station in the New York market. And classic rock as a format is enjoying an upswing in listenership. So over the past few years, more young people are turning to the format. So she's just a tremendous personality to me. I'm a huge fan, and it was an honor and a privilege to be in the room with you guys. So here I give you John's interview with Maria Milito.
Radio 418.
It's exactly what I thought a radio station would look like.
Yeah. Well, this room is like our backup studio, so that's the air studio, but they're exactly alike, which is good because if there's ever like they're doing maintenance in there and we need to go on the air from here, we can. Like in our old building, the two studios weren't identical, so if you had to go on the air because they were doing something in there, it was like 20 minutes to get everything like organized But since this is carbon copy and all the stations are exactly alike.
Okay, we're rolling now, actually. So.
We are?
Yeah.
All right, sorry, I wasn't. My mic,
That's
it doesn't
fine.
count. So all that stuff is just for us to talk about.
Exactly.
All right, so you can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Normally I say to people, you're comfortable talking on a mic, right? But like,
no. I don't know what to do. Yeah.
Right. No, but sometimes I'll see a guy start talking, because a lot of times when you do.
Oh, I love that. It makes me nuts if I'm emceeing an event and then the person comes up to the speaker.
Yeah.
And sometimes like I try to sneak up and like
push the microphone closer or move it, and then they go like, and they get really scared.
Right.
And I always feel bad, but people like, why would they know how to talk in a mic? You know?
Do you do events with other DJs sometimes, and do you find that that's easier?
No, because then it's more egos in the room.
Oh, okay.
I mean, sometimes we do station events. Like if we do, we used to do like big giveaways. We used to do a thing. We would give away $104,000.
Right.
And it would be like all of us on mic at Webster Hall taking turns and stuff. And that's okay. And I mean, I don't mind working with other DJs.
Right.
But it's just easier to do things solo.
The lone talent.
Yeah.
So, talking about native New Yorker, I'm assuming that's where you're from originally?
Yes. My family is from Brooklyn.
Oh, right.
Woo! Brooklyn in the house.
Whereabouts?
By the Brooklyn Navy Yard. My parents grew up next door to each other. They were like childhood sweethearts. Oh, so cute, right? First generation Italians in Brooklyn. And then my family did the Italian exodus from Brooklyn and they moved to Long Island.
Okay.
So I'm the youngest of three. So my brother and sister were born in Brooklyn and I was born in Hicksville, New York, Billy Joel town.
Okay.
So yeah, so I got to grow up on Long Island, but go to Brooklyn every weekend to see my grandparents.
Interesting.
You know, but then a lot of my relatives too moved out to Long Island or they moved to Jersey. You know, it's just people, I don't know, I guess after a while just move.
Yeah, well, Long Island was. I'm getting the sense that it was some kind of like promised land, like some suburban.
I think so.
I mean, my grandparents never learned how to drive.
Okay, yeah.
My grandfather was one of 8.
Oh my God, my mother never learned to drive, and she was one of 9.
Wow,
that's weird.
That is weird.
Okay.
Well, so when one of his brothers moved to Long Island, it was like he moved to New Zealand.
Oh, I know.
That was it. You never saw him again.
Yeah, it's really funny. I know. And then like my relatives would think we were in Hicksville and so and so just moved to Patchogue. You might know them, like as if it was one big, like we know them because that's not far at all.
Well, people say that to me about Brooklyn.
Exactly.
Oh, you're from Brooklyn? Do you know so and so? Where'd he grow up? Oh, in
no, it's true.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like no,
it's funny.
Okay.
So so I'm a native New Yorker, and lucky for me, I went to college at New York Tech in Old Westbury, and I never had to leave New York.
What did you study there?
Communication arts.
Okay.
I have a bachelor's degree in communication arts.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? It means nothing. It means I went to college. No, actually, what does that mean? Well, a communication arts course. I mean, this is like 100 years ago. You know, meant you learned journalism and advertising and radio and television production. And I actually went to school to be a comedy scriptwriter for television.
Really?
Yeah.
That was
what I wanted to be. Yes.
Okay.
And then I kind of fell
you to do that?
into radio. Well, do you remember the TV show Soap?
Yes.
With Billy Crystal?
Sure.
I loved that show.
Oh, really?
Growing up.
Okay.
Yeah. And there was something about that show. And like I just loved comedies, All in the Family, Sanford and Son, all those great shows, Norman Lear. The Odd Couple, loved all of those.
Yeah.
It's all the stuff I grew up with. I just really loved sitcoms, like those though, because those were so like brilliantly written.
Me too.
So I want to be a comedy scriptwriter.
Okay.
And then I kind of just fell into radio.
So what's the path from comedy scriptwriter to radio personality?
Let's see. So in college, my first semester you took radio production. Like I said, I went to New York Tech in Old Westbury. The college radio station was WNYT. We're rocking the island. And I asked them if I could.
Does that become like a tick after a while? Like you can't say the name of the station
without saying rocking the island.
Or whatever the slogan is.
Yes. That's true. Yeah. So let me think. So I started that I wrote like little bios and voiced bios on different artists.
Okay.
And for the college radio station. And then I don't know, I was interning at WBAB 102.3 on Long Island and with Mark Coppola, who wasn't there yet but was soon to come there and be a jock, and then I became his intern.
Okay.
And full circle because he works with me here at Q. But anyway, I don't even remember what led to what. There was an opening on air and whatever. And I don't know. So they were like, just why don't you go on the air? Blah, blah, blah. All right. And I went on the air and there was just something clicked.
No. So was there any desire to do this before?
No.
Really?
No. I mean, I grew up listening to the radio, and I mean, this is going to sound ridiculous, but back in the day when WABC was a music station, and my best friend and I used to, like, they would do the top however many songs at the end of the year, and we would like keep the list and like, oh, I heard this number, I got that number, oh, I didn't get this.
Oh,
like we were like really nerds about it.
Yeah.
And from like a little dinky cassette recorder, we would record songs off the radio.
Sure.
You know, and sometimes we would play radio. Like she had a big, what is it called? I guess a reel-to-reel, like a tape deck that was her brother's or her dad's. I don't even remember. And we used to do radio, but just as a goof. And it wasn't because I wanted to do it. We just loved music so much. You know, like her brother, her older brother, had all like these great rock albums. So he's the one who really turned us on. Like I remember Sticky Fingers having that zipper.
Sure.
You know, her brother Dennis had like the coolest stuff, and just with his friends and hanging out in the basement and playing all this music. So we really got, I feel like I got into music and turned on to music because of my best friend Eileen's brother Dennis.
Right.
And I mean, my brother and sister also were really into music, but differently. Like they were more into like pop stuff. My brother was really into the Beach Boys. Like he was one of those dudes that when he was in high school, he would peroxide his hair so he could look like a Beach Boy, you know, an Italian Beach Boy, go figure.
Got it.
And his good friend had a red Mustang, which was really cool. Okay. I remember that growing up.
All right.
Like a 66 red Mustang.
So you were already had like the passion for music.
Yeah, there was music.
Okay.
Yeah. I know. Sorry. I'm like totally dating and aging myself with what I'm talking about.
No, that's all right.
But that's what I grew up with.
Yeah.
So I grew up with a lot of music and loved music. But you know, just really wanted to do the comedy thing. And then once I went on the air, I don't know, it just clicked.
So what clicked for you, if you could describe it?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
You were immediately comfortable, though?
Yeah, there was just something clicked. Huh. And I wish I could remember. Like, I do remember doing it. Like, I remember the college radio station studio. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the shift I did was a night shift, like a 6 to 10 or something. Okay. And I just remember there was just like a vibe. There was just something about it that was like, oh my God, this is cool. Like the smell of the studio and the vinyl and getting it set and just like saying, hey, you know, blah, blah, blah band or whatever. I don't know. But something clicked.
But you were immediately sort of at ease talking on a mic, knowing that there's like however many thousands of people.
At that place, it was like probably 3 in the cafeteria listening to us.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a lot of.
It wasn't a lot. We were on we were on cable, which was really funny. We were on cable, and the college radio station was on cable TV on Long Island, and it was in the cafeteria. So that was like, oh, cool. Okay. People, you know, drinking coffee and studying for tests or hearing us.
I see.
Yeah.
And did you feel? I mean, maybe I'm overthinking this. I mean, did you feel like I'm talking to these people, I need to relate to them and what they're doing?
No, I don't think so.
You just
I don't recall that.
You were just thinking in terms of being a disc jockey, playing the records.
Yeah, like this is cool. It's music and I'm talking and wow. Okay. I don't think I thought about it that much. Okay. You know, like I would today. But then again, I was, 18 years old. Okay. So
how did that lead
to everything else?
Like what was the next step in terms of radio for you?
Let's see. So I was interning at BAB 102.3. I was taking all my college courses because I still wanted to get a college degree. Okay. So I still took, journalism and advertising and public relations and marketing, a lot of those courses. And of course I took a psychology course and I took a philosophy course and everything else that was required for a bachelor's degree. Okay. So, because, that radio thing might not happen. Sure. Right? You just never knew. Sure. Because there was also a part growing up, because I used to draw a lot. So I was also thinking to be a commercial artist. Okay. I wanted to do that. Nice. Jack of all trades, master of none. Sure, so I did I had my interest, but I knew it was creative. I knew that I was in something in that. Being the youngest, I feel like all of my friends who are creative are the youngest in their families. So I don't know if it's something, it's probably a study. Does that make sense? Or
could be.
Yeah. Because I just feel like the older I get, the more I run into that. But okay, so I was interning at the college radio station, and this is funny. And at the time, I was working in retail, and I won't tell you the store because I think it was a store that was in the Mid-Island Mall in Hicksville. Okay. And I worked there. It was like a high school job. All right. And the manager, who I really did not like, offered me to be a manager. Because I was good with people.
Right.
You know, like, oh, okay. So,
Sure.
you know, because I would talk to people or whatever, and I was good on the cash register because I was good. You know, I was actually a pretty good student growing
Right.
up. You would never think it. People think like you're an idiot because you're in radio.
Right.
Well, okay, maybe because I sound like an idiot on the air, but I was pretty smart. You know, like I was an honor student in high school. But, you know, you kind of forget that over the years.
Why do people think you're an idiot if you're on the radio?
Because they think all you're doing is you're pushing buttons and playing records.
How hard could it be?
Exactly.
Right.
Oh, I could do that.
Sure.
Do you know how many people in the course of my whole career have said, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I would be great. People tell me I have a great voice.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And then you put a microphone in front of them. It becomes the honeymooners. Humna, 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 you know?
Yep. That's it. So you're offered the manager job at the store.
Yeah. And I was like, well, and she's like, but you would have to not do your career. And I was just like, absolutely not. You know,
Right.
like quit college, absolutely not. And, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So she was a bit of a bitch. And I just remember being really angry one day at her for whatever reason that she pulled whatever. And I went home and I started to call radio stations out of the phone book. I swear this is true. You can ask my mom. She'll tell you.
Wow.
And there was a station that I remembered my parents used to listen to, WTHE 1520 AM.
AM. Yeah.
And they used to listen to big band music on it on the weekends. And that came up. And this guy answers the phone. You know, like, who am I calling? Hey, you're looking
Right.
for DJs? Like, who does that? But I
Right.
did that. And the guy was like, hey, actually, I am looking for somebody. Could you get me an air check? And now I'm thinking, what's an air check? Like, I kind of knew, but I was like, what? I don't
Right.
have an air check of my college. So
Right.
now I go to the college, you know, and one of my friends, like, you know, because it was but people who were at the college radio station were all different levels, all, you know, sophomores, freshmen, seniors, juniors, you know,
right.
people who are on the professional students who've been there for like 10 years, you know,
Right.
it really was
Right.
kind of WKRP-ish.
Yeah.
Which was great. So, you know, I asked advice of somebody and they told me what to do. So I went and I put together an air check, which is just you talking into music. You know, I don't even know where that tape is or if I even, like, I have no idea.
Okay.
Whatever. I know that would be cool if I still had that, but
Sure.
nobody would care about it except me and you.
Right.
But anyway, so I wound up getting hired as a board op at WTHE.
Uh-huh.
And it was a gospel station. So basically, I ran the board for all the preachers that would come in, and it was like pay for time. Like they would
Right.
they would pay for 15 minutes and preach for 15 minutes. And I worked weekends.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was crazy, and I remember at the college radio station, you know, hanging out with people, they're making fun of me because you're working at a gospel station, seriously. And I'm like, hey, I'm getting minimum wage. I'm getting a check with call letters on it.
Right.
And that was in my head.
Nice.
You know, and at that point I realized
In the game.
I'm in the game. And at that point I realized I will never say no to a radio job because of the format. Because if you can do any format, then you'll always work.
Sure.
But this was, again, you know, 20 plus years ago. The way it
Yeah.
is today, it's different. You know, like obviously I can't do hip hop today because I've been
Right.
doing classic rock my whole life.
Right.
But
Right.
at that point, you know, at that time you could do different formats. So
People could move around.
right. So yeah, so that's how I started out at a gospel radio station.
How long did that last?
You know, I should have thought of all this before we spoke. Well, I don't, you know, it lasted, I want to say it probably lasted for a year or two
Okay.
because then I was offered, and that, okay, so the other thing about the gospel radio station, which was pretty cool, I was their blue-eyed soul sister because I would go to like all these preachers, they would do their big revivals on Saturday night.
Okay.
So it actually was really a lot of fun.
Okay. So you're like running the board at remote stuff as well.
No, just running it at the radio station.
Oh, okay.
Like on Saturday, it would be different preachers, right?
Okay.
But they also had a German hit parade and a polka party.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And I would run the board for those guys.
Okay.
But they got to trust me so that when those guys, the German hit parade and the polka party guy,
Yeah.
when they would go on vacation, it got to a point where they asked me to do their shows. So that was pretty cool too.
So that was the beginning of your on-air.
Right,
experience.
because I was still on the air at my college radio station regularly after that.
Okay.
So I would do but that was like a once or twice a week show. But to actually then do the polka party. Now again, you can do in my head was learn any format. What do I know about polka music?
Sure.
Obviously, other than, you know, Weird Al Yankovic's dad.
Right.
Right? But
Right.
I was playing Weird Al Yankovic's dad.
Yeah.
Right? Doing polka music.
And the name of the artist is printed on the record. So, I mean,
And the German hit
there it
parade,
is.
it's like, you know, you can take a list of what the hits are and say, you know,
Coming up next week.
Coming up next is this German name, and it's number 5 on the German hit parade this week, or whatever.
Okay.
So that was really kind of a cool introduction to, okay, I can do this and learn.
Okay.
And also because the station was called at the time an AM daytimer, they would sign off according to when the sun would set. So in the winter, you sign off at like 4:30.
Oh, wow.
But in the summertime, you would sign off at like 8:30, or at 7 o'clock when 8 o'clock when the sun set. And a lot of the preachers aren't paying for time on a Saturday night. So the program director used to tell me, well, just, play something, play music, do whatever you want. So I would call it, it was the nighttime cool down. And what I would do is it's so funny because it's like crystal clear as if I just did it last week. Yeah. But I would grab the albums, and they were all gospel albums, and find something that was a little more jazzy and not religious and play that. Because I just really needed to fill time for a couple of hours.
Okay.
And we had like 2 phone lines coming in. So, hey, if you have a request, call me. Like, I don't even know if anybody listened to the show.
Okay.
But it was a way for me to be on the air and play music.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You kind of stumbled into having your own show.
My own show. Yeah.
Wow.
And did that for like the summertime because I worked every Saturday. I think I worked Saturday and Sunday, but I definitely worked every Saturday.
Wow.
So that was like my first paying gig.
Okay. And did you gain some recognition from that?
No.
Okay.
But it was a paycheck, and, it's good for resume. And it was good for the next step to say, well, yeah, I'm working at a station.
Okay. So now you're an actual on-air personality
sort
at
of.
some of the stations.
Sort of.
Okay. So then what was the next step after that?
The next step was a station, WRIV, which was out in Riverhead. And it was a middle-of-the-road station. At the time, whatever that now is, I don't even think that format doesn't exist. But middle of the road at the time was like the Mills Brothers and Tommy Dorsey, and it was like big bands, but it was vocalists.
Okay.
And maybe what's his name, Pat Boone, like middle of the road music. That's what it was
MOR,
called.
yeah,
MOR.
It's
like vocalists. But it was also, Glenn Miller.
Easy
it was also
listening.
easy listening.
Got
right.
It. Okay.
But they also used to run Navy football games on Saturday.
Wow.
So, yeah. Yeah. So, here I am. And again, it's another AM station.
Right.
And I don't remember how I got that job. If the person, I think it was through somebody. You know what? I have to think about it. And I'll remember tonight as I'm trying to fall asleep.
All right.
Because the person who hired me there then took over WGLI 1290 AM.
Okay.
And that was an oldie station. And he was the program director at RIV. And then he went to GLI and he took me.
Okay.
And I was still in college. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay,
so he took me there. And it's really funny because when that happened, I'm pretty sure, because I graduated 6 months early. I got my bachelor's degree in like 3.5 years because I did internships.
Okay.
So my thought was, if I'm going to do an internship and get 3 credits, I'd rather do that.
Right.
So I did I did 2 internships at BAB, and I think I did one in a recording studio in Farmingdale.
All right.
I think I did that and got credit for that. So this way I could graduate early.
Right.
Because like as much as I love school, it was like I got to get out of here. It was time. It was time. Yeah.
Sure.
So it just so happened that this boss took me and I started, like I think I graduated, and then like within a couple of weeks, I started working full time at GLI.
At the oldie station.
At the oldie station.
Okay.
Which was very much like what CBS FM used to be like, with doo-wop and with 50s, 60s.
Right.
So I started working there, and then I got a full-time shift at night, and then he made me the music director.
Huh.
And then during the week, I would do an Elvis hour, play all Elvis, take requests. And then I would do, and this is what got me into meeting record people, that some of them are still around today, record company guys, because then I would do like a top 10 list, but it was like the current music of that time. So it was, like Total Eclipse of the Heart, or, like when that was a pop hit.
Sure.
When this was all new stuff.
Yeah.
And so then I would play it and do it once a week, which was also, not that it made the station relevant, but it kind of made the station relevant because at the time, Nassau, Suffolk, which was Long Island, was the 10th market. Like New York is the number 1 market, radio market in the country, right? LA is number 2. Nassau, Suffolk, which equals Long Island, at the time was the 10th market, which now it's not. It's like number 20 or something.
This is something that has come up in a lot of my conversations with some of like the Happy Together artists and stuff, where there were still local radio markets.
Yeah.
So even within New York, what you're telling me is that like there was like a Nassau Suffolk with its own market.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, of course, you had the bleed over basically of New York market of New York radio
City.
stations, right?
Okay.
But it was
Which
a
is-
top 10.
which is
it was
the
number
5
10
boroughs.
with the 5 boroughs. Yeah,
what they
but
consider it.
it was the 10th market.
Okay.
I mean, this is in the 80s, in
So
the
it was-
early 80s.
So it was important for record companies to break.
Sure, it
in-
didn't hurt.
in
You know
Nassau,
what? It didn't
Suffolk.
hurt them,
Okay.
and it didn't hurt me. And
Yeah.
it didn't hurt the radio station
Sure.
because my thought was, well, we had younger people then at night because we were old. We were playing Three Dog Night and we were playing Paul Revere on the radio because we were an
Right.
older station.
Okay.
So from there, and I was always really paid so much attention to New York radio,
Okay.
and I listened to it, and I knew some people, but it was more of listening to people and seeing, following who does what, who goes where.
Okay. New York radio at that time was who, and what stations?
Okay, so at the time. I mean,
You're
it
saying
was
it
in the
was
early
the
80s. It was the
okay.
early 80s. So
So WNEW.
WNEW,
Was
Scott
happening.
Muni was there.
Yeah.
92.3 was a disco station.
Right.
Was KTU.
To KTU.
Right. CBS FM was CBS
That
FM
was the
doing
oldies.
Z100 was really just starting out.
That was the hot.
That was
station.
Z100 means money. What? Now give me my money. Z100 means music
money.
or means music or now give me my money. Means more music because I
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
I remember I wasn't working in New York yet. I was working out there and being on 23rd Street or 40. I don't remember where I was in the city with a friend of mine, and we were in a car that had a T-top, had the roof down.
Yeah.
And the Z100 van was next to us. And I was like, Z100 means more music. Now give me my money. And I thought like
That's
that was so cool of me that I'm screaming out a station slogan, and then
Right.
and the van driver's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, who are you? Shut
Right.
up. I hear that every day.
That's funny.
So, but it was in the time when they were doing the worst to first. Remember when they did the campaign? They went from worst to first, and then they did.
Right.
So it was in that time. You don't remember? That's okay.
I remember.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah, that was because I was taping songs off the radio in those
Yeah.
days. We had
Yeah.
my sister got a boom box for Christmas one year, like this pink little boom box.
Okay.
And I noticed that you could tape. It was a cassette with a radio, and you could tape off the radio without having to like hold the cassette. Because I always had a tape recorder.
Right.
But you'd have to hold it up to
Right,
the radio.
right.
This would record like directly.
Direct.
From
Oh,
the
that's
thing.
cool. That's cooler than what I had. Yeah,
And,
yeah.
I talk about this all the time. My early influences on bass were the pop songs of the 80s, like 84, 85. There were a lot of hit songs with really prominent bass
Bass,
parts, like
yeah.
Let's Hear It for the Boy,
Yeah, yeah.
Borderline, Every Time You Go Away.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
And I
yeah.
remember like sitting next to that boombox, like with my bass,
Right.
playing the songs off the radio. So I remember Z100. Then later I started listening to NEW like every morning, hearing Ken every morning. In the,
Oh, okay. Well, that was later on. Yeah.
but
That's when I was already a K-Rock.
okay.
Yeah.
And then
yeah.
WPLJ
Sure.
also, right, was 95.5.
Yes.
Did that become WAPP?
No, that was 103.5.
103.5.
Was
Okay.
APP. 103.5 APP. I was working in Riverhead
Oh, okay.
at the time at RIV
Got it.
when it was that summer of commercial-free music.
Ah.
That was amazing because I remember going to the beach, being in college, going to the beach, and you could just walk and hear the same song. Like,
Right.
Walk.
Right.
You could walk like
every state.
everybody had
their
the
radio
same
at
exact
station.
thing until they
Okay.
played commercials, and then that was it.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah.
You're at the oldie
So,
station.
I'm at the oldie station. I heard that the jock who was doing weekends at KTU, 92.3 KTU at the time was a
Yeah.
disco station.
Right.
And I was definitely I have to admit it, I was a rockhead growing up.
Okay.
So and my brother was really into disco music. So I was definitely of the disco sucks generation. Kids are just like, oh, that sucks. It's
Right.
not rock and roll.
Those battle lines were pretty
Correct.
well drawn.
They were very well drawn.
Okay.
Well, I always feel like you always be careful what you say in life because you always get taught a lesson.
Uh-huh.
It's like, no good will come of this.
Right.
So the person who was doing weekends at KTU left to do full-time overnights at Z100.
Okay.
So I FedExed my air check to the program director at KTU.
Yeah.
And I got hired.
Oh, wow.
And I was like one of 100 people, I was told. I mean, and it was just, it's the thing. I remember reading this a million years ago. ABC, the ABC of when you get something, it's ability, breaks, and courage. Yeah. So, I mean, that was a break for me. It's like being lucky. Right. It doesn't always happen because, they always say
there was this opening. And
and I just went for it and I happened to be one of the people,
But that's not unlike looking up radio stations in the phone book and calling them out of the blue either. I mean,
I guess. I mean, I guess I was determined, but you know what? But I always feel, I mean, you go to a baseball game, you see like an amazing young hitter, and you know that somewhere in the Midwest, there's a kid who's in a field and he could probably hit better than the guy we just saw, at Yankee Stadium or Citi Field, but nobody discovered him.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Like how many players did Michael Jordan, like how many basketball players whooped Michael Jordan's ass?
Right. But nobody discovered them.
Right.
So, I mean, and that's where I think the breaks come in. Like, you have to have the ability, but you really have to have the breaks. And the breaks to me are sometimes you get lucky, and I got lucky.
Okay.
So of the 100 people, then I got hired at KTU. Now it's disco. Guess what I knew nothing about. But remember, goes full circle. Always learn a format, right?
How long did that adjustment take for you to make?
Not so long. You know, I mean, I also used to listen to the station a lot. So, that was the thing too of listening to so many different stations. You also kind of learn the music too. Didn't, like again, I mean, it's a job, so I'm going to learn.
Sure.
So then I worked at KTU and did weekends, and then I started to be a fill-in person, and I worked until they flipped to K-Rock.
And when did that happen?
1985.
Okay.
I got hired in 84.
All right.
And then in 1985, it flipped to K-Rock, and they got rid of everyone, but they kept me because I was young, and I was like, I grew up with this music because K-Rock at the time was rock, and then it became classic rock later. And now this music was my best friend's brother, all the music that I heard growing up.
Right.
And all the 45s and everything that my brother and sister had. Well, this is the music now that I'm playing.
Okay. Did they know that about you and think like, okay, we got this rock person already in-house?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I told them that this was the music I grew up with. So I know this music.
Okay.
And I think they just needed somebody to do overnights because nobody ever wants to do overnights, which never made sense to me because overnights in New York, it's a 24-hour city.
No kidding.
You know what I mean? So there's an audience out there. It's not like you're talking to cows.
Right.
I'm not doing overnights in Wisconsin.
Right.
I mean, it's New York City. There's always, it's a 24-hour city. There's always someone.
Some security guard at 2 a.m. got the radio on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, and that was it.
How much warning did you have? Like, we're switching the station over to rock. Like
at KTU?
Yeah.
Day of.
Like you show up one day and say, guess what, folks? Tomorrow, we're no longer a disco station.
Yeah.
No shit. Really?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we had a meeting that afternoon. We flipped at midnight. Oh yeah, they never, because nobody trusts jocks. They think we're going to talk about it, and most jocks will. Yeah, you never. Yeah, format changes. You find out day of, and then it flips.
No kidding.
Oh yeah.
So
because they what do you do for a living? You speak. So what are you going to do? You're going to tell someone.
Two questions.
I was going to tell somebody. I was going to tell somebody.
Right. So 2 questions.
Yeah.
Why do you think they switched formats?
I think because at the time it was disco, and then probably the last few months, as I recall, in the earlier in the year of 1985, they sort of went to top 40.
Okay.
And they weren't doing well. Station wasn't doing well ratings wise.
Okay.
So then I think there was a hole in the market for rock at the time. This is 1985.
For new rock. Right, because
not new, for just rock.
NEW.
Yeah, but NEW is always doing something different. I know you're in love with NEW, but and anyone who worked at NEW, but you have to realize Mark Coppola and I came from K-Rock. Okay. So NEW had a very different way of music than other rock.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Well, I mean, that was the thing. I mean, look,
I don't want to burst your bubble. I don't want to do that.
There's no bubble. It's not like a Mets-Yankees rivalry kind of thing.
Yeah, well, no, it is for us, but that's okay.
I see.
No, I'm joking. No, because people always assume, because I work in classic rock now, that Mark Coppola and I came from NEW. And I'm like, no, we came from K-Rock.
Right.
Because back in the day, those were the arch rivals, even though we all knew each other jock-wise, but NEW and K-Rock were the two rock stations.
The two rival rock stations.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, because NEW had been around longer, and it was like the legacy.
Right, it had the legacy
thing,
jocks, and right.
And we were talking, Jill and I were talking about this on the way in, about how they would play the classic rock, which at the time was not that
Really,
old,
right?
only
Not
20
at all.
years old.
Right, exactly.
But then they would also play new
of course,
stuff.
yeah,
And K-Rock focused more on
newer stuff,
the newer stuff.
right? Like the Hooters. I remember we used to play the Hooters. Every time I
Right.
hear the Hooters, I think of K-Rock.
Right.
You know, back in the day.
Right.
Mike and the Mechanics, like all
Right.
that stuff.
Right.
Yeah, we focus on that. But then
Focusing on the modern
we eventually, I don't even remember what year it was, but then we went to classic rock.
Yeah.
So then it was different.
So were you there when Flo and Eddie were on?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Flo, and I must be Eddie.
Right.
Yeah. I love those guys.
Yes.
They're great.
I owe a lot of my podcast chops to Mark Volman.
Yeah.
The first time I interviewed one of the principals on the Happy Together tour was Gary Lewis. We talked for 2 hours.
Nice.
And for like 3 days, I was editing this interview.
Right.
Volman walks on the bus and he sees me with my light. He says, "You're still," and he says, "Shut that off." He says, let's talk. And he sat me down. He's like, "What are you trying to do here?" I mean, in like
Right.
a 10-minute conversation,
Oh, nice.
he explained to me like, what are you trying to get
Right,
across
right.
to the listener with this conversation? So I have a lot to,
I
to
love
thank
those
for.
guys. And I mean,
Yeah.
it's just so funny because, like I said, growing up, like my sister, brother loved the Turtles.
Yeah.
So all those 45s are still at my mom's.
Uh-huh.
Then I go to GLI, the oldie station. Now I'm playing the Turtles. How
Right.
cool, because I was growing up with it. Then I work at K-Rock years later
Yeah.
with Flo and Eddie,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's like, oh my God, I love you guys. I become like a groupie. So it's, yeah. It's
Talk
kind of
about
weird.
like showbiz survivors, man.
Yeah.
And Howard, I did an interview with Howard that was like, I felt like an FM DJ, and it was late at night,
Aw.
and the conversation just went like
everywhere. That's
everywhere. You know what I mean?
cool. I love that.
So okay, so you're at K Rock, and now are you becoming Maria Milito at this point, or were you
slowly.
conscious of that? I mean,
I wasn't conscious of it, and doing overnights was weird. It was an education. It was great, I thought, but honestly, I really feel like I used to always say, because when I worked at GLI, the oldie station, I worked 6 hours. I worked like 7 to midnight, 5 hours, 6 days a week.
Okay.
And it's like you can either get better or you don't. And not to be cocky. And I guess maybe I was like a 20-something, 20 years old and cocky.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I don't really think I was becoming Maria Milito until K-Rock hired Howard Stern. And Howard would go on vacation or take days off. And Tony Pigg used to, because he was also doing weekends. And Tony Pigg would do the best of Stern.
Okay.
And that's just, hey, this is when Howard had, what's his name? Oh my God. The comedian, Sam Kinison.
Yep.
It's when Sam Kinison was in town, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And you play that bit. Well, then Tony left to be the voice for Regis.
Right.
So he couldn't do best of anymore. So then they asked me, would you do best of? And I was just like, yeah.
Yeah.
Because why not? Because at the time, Howard was on K-Rock and he was on YSP in Philadelphia and WJFK in Washington.
Right.
So you were on in those I would be on in those stations as well.
So
that's how people got to know me, which was really weird. Because I would go out for an audition and, the casting person would be like, Maria Milito, why do I know that name? And I'm like, do you listen to Howard? Oh my God, that's why I know you.
Right. So you got caught up in the Howard.
God, on his coattails.
thing.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's how people knew me, really that's how, I won't say knew me, but my name recognition, I think, was from doing the Stern Show.
Interesting.
Yeah, because the more the Stern Show grew, a lot of the stations around the country would still use my voice in the morning.
Okay. Would you say that there was a shift toward there being, how do I articulate this? Once Howard came along,
The whole game changed.
the whole game
of
changed.
course, of what kind of jocks you're looking for, and
What kind of jocks
absolutely.
and just like an attitude
Everything changed.
about it was less about the music and more about the personalities.
Yes, I would. Yes,
Would you say that
I would
happened?
say that happened, and it was more of many people tried to imitate Howard. They
Right.
tried to be shock jocks,
The shock
and they weren't
jocks,
right,
right.
and they weren't. And to
No.
me, because for me, Howard's on a pedestal because I always loved him. I still do. I thought he was funny. I think he's funny.
Yeah.
I thought
He's
he did a
also
great
evolved
show.
a lot.
His
throughout
shows
the
evolved,
years.
but from the beginning, to me, he was always. I remember I was living in Queens at the time, and I would drive to do the overnight, and then Howard would do mornings.
Yeah.
And I would drive home and whatever he was talking about, and I would pull into my parking spot and just sit there and listen like everybody else, because I don't want to miss what he's going to say next.
Sure.
Especially when he would talk about stuff at the radio station or people, and it was hysterical.
Right.
You know, like to me, it was hysterical because like he's talking about my family, or, you know, he's talking about us.
Right.
But I did notice after that a lot of stations would look for not just someone who knew music, but they're looking for a shock jock. Or then there would be these jocks who would just be screaming obscenities. And it's like, you're not funny and you're not good.
Right.
And you're not him.
Right.
But,
right.
you know, luckily that was a phase and it didn't, you know, it didn't remain. You know what I mean? Like around the country, we still have people, it's not even really shock jocks anymore, but they're like the big personalities, and that's great. But there's room for you. There's room for you, and there's room for us.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I feel like now it's a balance.
Okay. So now you're at Q.
Now I'm at Q. Right. I came to Q in 1996.
Okay. Directly from K-Rock.
Correct.
Okay.
And I was at K-Rock for 6 months when it became alternative. And again, they fired everybody except me. And Howard... I know. I don't know why that happened.
You're like the woman of steel here.
It's weird.
Man.
Yeah, but don't say that because it's like not good. I'm so superstitious. It's
right.
like,
okay.
not good.
Okay.
This is wood. Okay. So, and this was like really funny. David Hinckley, who used to write the radio column in the Daily News.
Right.
Okay. So when K-Rock flipped in January 1996 from classic rock, to alternative,
right.
They fired everyone. I mean, even the person who did like one overnight on a weekend, they fired everyone, paid everyone out except me.
And again, this is like what you were saying before about flipping on like a moment's notice. Hey guys, tomorrow we're alternative.
Oh yeah, that we had the afternoon meeting and then it flipped.
Jeez.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's crazy. You were there at that time? Yeah.
Infinity rep.
Yeah.
94 to 97.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they get rid of everyone. They keep me. They brought in people from the West Coast who ran stations out on the West Coast of alternative in the company.
They brought executives in.
Correct.
Okay.
And they promised me that, and I knew music. Like I love music, right? So all the alternative stuff they were playing, the Smashing Pumpkins and Oasis and all that stuff that was out in all the grunge.
96.
Like I knew that stuff. That's what I was listening to.
Right. That's where rock was going.
Yeah, and it would be perfect for me to be on the air there because I was still young enough and, whatever.
Yeah.
So they dangled in front of me for 6 months that it was between me and Stuttering John because Stuttering John was an intern on the Stern Show. And what would be more perfect than to have me on middays following Howard because people knew me from doing the Stern Show anyway.
Sure.
Perfect in every other world except the world we live in. And they dangled that in front of me for 6 months.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the other jocks that came in said to me, "You're known for classic rock.
Right.
Even if you belong in that midday shift, you'll never get it." And it's interesting because Howard even said to me on the air, Howard called me in one day and said, and we were in the studio, and he was like, he goes, "We all made bets on which jocks are going to get our," he goes, "and I bet against you." And I remember, I think Fred and Gary bet in my favor that I was going to be kept. And I was like, "Are you kidding? You made a bet against me?" And I'll never forget. And it cracks me up till this day. He goes, "They just said that to make it look good for you in Hinckley's stupid column." Because he goes, "This way it doesn't look like a bloodbath that they fired everyone. Like we got rid of everyone, but we're keeping Maria Milito."
Right.
Because, we're considering her for something.
Right.
Well, I wanted them to fire me.
Right.
Because I wanted the severance.
Of course.
I'd been there for a really, really long time and they paid, and everybody else got severance.
Okay.
So, you know what? Everyone who left wound up with something better. And they said to me, stick it out, something better is ahead.
Uh-huh.
And sure enough, in June of 96, I got a call. "Hey, we're flipping 104.3. It was NCN, the classical station, and then it was AXQ, but it was Q104 was the pure rock station.
Right.
Right?
Right.
We're flipping pure rock to classic rock. Do you want to do middays?" What?
Done.
Oh my God.
There you go.
I'll never forget, Sydney. I was on my way to Shea Stadium to go to a Met game and telling my best friend, like, "Oh my God, I just got offered middays." And she was like, Are you kidding? That's amazing. Take it. My best
Nice.
friend, who's her older brother.
Brother
right.
Dennis.
It'll go
Okay.
full circle. Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
So July 1st, 1996, the first song I played, I was hired to do Noon to 4, back in the New York groove from Ace
All
Frehley.
right.
And classic rock was back.
Beautiful.
And I've been here ever since. Again, knock wood.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
Because the first time I met Ken, we had this conversation. This was in I want to say it was 04.
Okay.
I was playing with Denny Lane at the cutting room.
Okay.
And this
The
guy,
old cutting room.
The old cutting room.
Yeah, yeah.
So this guy comes up to me, hey, man, great show. I want to, I'm like, oh, yeah, hey, buddy, thanks so much. And I didn't know who he was.
Right.
And he's talking, he said, yeah, because Denny, blah, 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 blah. He starts talking to me, blah, 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 blah. And I'm listening. I'm like, do I know you from somewhere? He's, well, I'm Ken Dashiell. I'm like, oh, my God, Ken
Right.
Dashiell. Oh, I listen to you every morning. And once he saw that I knew who he was like, oh, yeah, well, and then he turned into Ken Dashiell. I used to wake up so I went to music and art.
Right.
And I had.
So you heard him when he was on with Dave Herman?
Yes.
Yes.
I
okay.
would wake up. I would set my alarm for 5 a.m. and listen to the last hour of his show before I got in the shower to commute to the city every morning. But we started talking, and he told me about how when 102.7 switched from rock.
Right.
He says, they told us rock is dead. Classic rock is dead. Nobody cares about Hendrix anymore. Nobody cares about Zeppelin anymore. He says, meanwhile, here we are at Q thriving. He seemed to have a lot of pride in the fact that the format was still alive and kicking. Did you feel the same way as that?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. You mean now today?
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, this is now
Absolutely.
we're talking many, many years later since I met him that day.
Yes.
So-
I feel like classic rock I don't think it gets the respect that it deserves, but I always say to people,
Why is that?
I don't know. I think because sometimes people think that classic rock is like a gold format, and gold meaning like oldies.
Old, right.
But it's not. I mean, the music to me is, yes, if it's old because it's more than 2 years old, well then, yeah.
Yeah.
But to me, it's not old sounding.
No.
It's not, I mean, for me, you turn on television and so many TV commercials have classic rock. And for me, I can't tell you, for the most part, I probably can't tell you the product because I'm like, oh my God, what a great song to use.
Right.
Okay. And that's just me, and I don't want to deter people from using classic rock in their commercials because I think it's a great idea because it also it reminds me of way back when the California raisins used, I heard it through the grapevine with the singing raisins.
Right.
But that turned on all these little kids to that song.
Well, the first time I heard Good Vibrations was in a Sunkist commercial.
Exactly. So it turns on like a whole new generation. And I think between TV commercials, I think TV shows, how many Who songs have been used in, CSI and car commercials and then movies themselves.
Right. And that's separate from evoking the era.
Right.
Right.
No, yeah. Meaning like if it's a show set like Stranger Things is set in the 70s, so you're going to hear, or 80s now. So you're going to hear music. No, I'm talking about just in a commercial or a movie that they just use it and it's just perfect. But to me, I'm always like so pleased because it turns on like a whole new generation. And I know that for a fact because we'll do appearances and I see the 40-something-year-old parent come with the teenager and the teenager's wearing a Hendrix or a Zeppelin shirt. And I'm always like, thanks, kid. You're going to keep me employed.
That's it.
And the father loves it. But because I think it's different. I mean, I grew up, my parents listened to country music on WHN and they listened to WNEW AM, big bands, and they listened to easy listening music.
Mm-hmm.
But the more of the current generations to me, people like kids grew up with classic rock.
Yes.
And their parents' music was cool. And it still is cool.
Right.
And I think that's where it's changed over the years.
The music that your parents listened to does not automatically get shoved away. Oh, that's not,
that's old.
You don't,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't write something off strictly just because it's old.
Right. Correct.
You know what I mean? Something can be 50 years old and still sound
amazing,
fresh.
Like it just fresh, and that's the perfect word.
Still sound cutting edge.
And I see it, and I say it all the time. We'll get a client or whoever might come in with and bring kids in sometimes, and the kids are 10, and they're from New York.
Yeah.
And the parents love the station, and I ask the kid, well, "What do you listen to?" I go, "Don't tell me. You listen to Z100, right?"
Yeah.
How old are you? I'm 10.
Yeah.
Okay, and I always look at the parent and go, give it about 5 or 6 years.
Right.
When the kid becomes a teenager, they're going to be turned on to classic rock. If not, when they go to college, because they're going to hear it from their other friends. And they're going to get into Pink Floyd and all those cool things that college kids get into.
Right.
And it's just, and not to sound jaded about it, but I see it over and over and over. And it's just, it kind of makes me laugh. It does. It makes me laugh.
And how predictable it is. Almost.
It's very predictable, but in a great way.
Yeah. All right. So classic rock. I mean, you've seen my shows at BB King's.
Mm-hmm.
Those shows are always packed.
Packed. People love you.
Well,
they do.
Thank you very much.
But they do.
Well, I feel like they love that music.
But you're part of it.
Well,
yes, they love that music, but that music could be played not well.
That's true.
And they could be like, "Oh, we're not coming back."
That's true.
Come on.
All right. So, all right, but so
take a compliment. You're good. You're excellent.
You. All right, I will graciously accept that compliment. So, but from where you sit, where does classic rock live? Like, who are the people? Like, what sector of society, of the population listens to this
demographics?
Music?
You mean
demographics, and not just like age. Is there something that beyond like just people's age that are attracted to this music?
Honestly, I think it's changed so much over the years.
Okay.
I think it's blue collar. I think it's white collar.
Yeah.
I think it's. I don't think it's a particular profession. I don't think it's a gender. Mm. And that's just what I've learned over the years. I would say maybe years and years and years ago, it would be, cops and firemen, males.
Right.
Right? But it's not like that anymore. And I just know that from doing appearances, when you go out and you meet the public and you see who's listening to you. And like twice a year we give away a car, and I always am the person to give the car away. And I know this is going to sound, what's the word? Not pretentious. It's not going to sound sincere, but I really do enjoy meeting listeners, because to me, I need to see who I'm talking to.
Right.
Like, I think I know who I'm talking to, but when we give away a car and I get to see, the 35-year-old couple with their 2 little kids, and then I get to see the guy who's in his mid-60s, who's retired with his wife, and show me pictures of his grandkids. Well, that's cool too.
Yeah.
And it gives me, so I know who I'm talking to.
Okay.
So I think it's really changed a lot over the years.
I thought for a long time that the way that audiences are measured has changed, but I've thought for a long time that the way that demographics are positioned needs to be recalibrated.
Okay.
Like 35 plus or 50 plus or whatever. That's not old anymore.
Right. Because before you'd be like 25, 54. And yeah. Right.
And yet it's still the framework is the same.
Right.
As it always has been.
I agree with that.
Like what you're saying is the people who are listening run the gamut of all ages.
Absolutely.
All, psychographics.
And I don't think it was always like that, but I would say the past maybe 10 years or so, maybe even more. I just feel like it runs the gamut. And then I'll see, teenagers just by what the shirts they're wearing or, it's really interesting to me. Also, I see it because we do a lot of giveaways, on the weekends. Like this coming weekend, we're doing a U2 weekend or whatever. And I get to see take down the winner's information. And sometimes it's like somebody, they were born like 1999. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so cool.
Wow. Interesting.
Like, hey, sorry, kid, if there's an extra lilt in my voice, but, But then on the flip of it, then I'll get somebody, and again, it's not any disrespect because it's excellent, but they'll be like, and they'll apologize and be like, oh, I'm born in, and they'll give me a year in the 40s. And I'm like,
right.
There's nothing wrong with that. That's excellent too.
Right. I used to get that a lot, not so much anymore because I shut them down really quickly when I meet people at gigs at these shows.
Yeah.
And they say to me, "You're so young. How could you? How do you know
I used to
this
get that.
music?"
Yep, I used to get that.
I'm 45. I was born in 1972.
Right.
And one day I just got fed up, and somebody was like, "Yes, how could you possibly know this music? This is before." And finally, I just snapped. Would you say that to an opera singer?
Right. Exactly.
Good for you. How can you know this music? It was written in the 1800s. You weren't born yet. Like, how
Good
can
for
you know
That's
so
a
much about
perfect
something
answer.
that you don't have to be alive when it was happening
That's
to
right.
know it? So, what's the future for classic rock then? Like, how do you see it progressing into the next 10, 20, 30 years?
Well, I would say if it goes along the speed that it's going, first of all, the Rolling Stones have to live forever.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
By all indications,
It looks
they
good.
just might.
Yeah. I mean, like right now, and it makes people laugh, but the fact that we play Soundgarden or Green Day, and that's classic rock. The stuff has been out for a long time. Like we play Metallica.
Yeah.
You know, because they've been around a long time. And Skid Row, like all of those 80s bands are becoming classic rock.
Yeah.
So I don't really think, I think that classic rock, the term has changed over the years because it doesn't mean it's old. It just means it's a classic, if you want to put it that way.
Okay.
You know, like I remember, I don't know, was it K-Rock that we used to say, it doesn't have to be old to be a classic.
Right.
Maybe we did it here. I don't remember. Sometimes the years are starting melding together in my head.
I was trying to remember who classic rock to the cutting edge was. Was that an EW?
That was an EW.
Okay.
Yeah, you're still stuck on an EW.
I'm sorry.
Whatever. Anyway, I forgive you.
I'm sorry.
It's really funny. Of course it was an EW.
It's like a Met fan interviewing Reggie Jackson.
Yeah, really. It's fine. Whatever. No, it's fine. But yeah, from the cutting edge to classic rock, that was an EW.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
okay, so but like the what we call classic rock today, the Cream, Hendrix, Beatles, Zeppelin, like that era. I mean, it's
continues. We still play that stuff.
Right. It shows no sign of stopping.
I don't think
right
so.
now. Okay.
And I think because we add so much, we're adding, stuff gets added because it's aging, if that makes sense. It's like fine wine.
Right.
Like Metallica is like fine wine. Now that comes aboard.
Right.
The only thing that concerns me, and that's just me being a worrywart, and I get concerned, is the artist dying. And that freaks me out. Like when Ray Manzarek died, it freaked me out because when the Doors were touring with Ian Astbury from The Cult, and they played at Roseland, and I got to host the show, and it was the coolest thing ever because the first year it was the coolest. The second year they didn't let me do it. Why? Because radio people around the country messed it up. Okay, because they were called the New Doors or the Doors of the what was it? The Doors of the New Century or something like that. They couldn't for legal reasons. They couldn't just be called the Doors. Okay, but exactly. They were at Roseland, and the manager said to me, "You're going to go on stage. They're going to show this like video thing. They're going to play music behind you, and it's going to be like the live album, ladies and gentlemen from Los Angeles, California, then at the beginning of Roadhouse Blues. And all the guys are going to come on stage when you start talking, and then it's going to go into Roadhouse Blues." And I'm like, oh my God, like just telling you, it gives me a chill because it was it was like one of the coolest introductions I ever got to do.
Sure.
So now I'm up there and I get the signal and I see they're playing like this video behind me, and then I see Ray Manzarek come up, and then I see Robbie Krieger, and and then Ian Astbury comes out, and then I'm like, and ladies and gentlemen, like it was just telling you, I get a chill because it was so friggin' cool. All right, it was so cool, and I was like, the Doors.
You were a big Cult fan too, right?
Oh yeah, and Ian Astbury, that was a time, and I mean he looked like the Lizard King, the way he was dressed. He had the hair like Jim Morrison when in his like hot days, looked like when he was the Lizard King.
Okay,
and that was the coolest thing. Oh, it was the Doors of the 20th century. That's what you had to call them, which was fine.
Okay.
The next time they came around, a year or two later, they had their manager or whoever, their roadie, whoever it was. They're like, oh, just go up and warm up, say hi to the crowd, whatever. Well, can I do the introduction like last time? He goes, no, because jocks around the country were getting it wrong. They would say the Doors, and you couldn't call them the Doors because I think at the time John Densmore was suing them or something.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
So that was that. But that was like one of the coolest things I got to do.
Yeah.
And being a Doors fan too.
Sure.
But when Ray Manzarek died, I guess that was the beginning. It really bothered me because I thought, oh my God, the Doors are done. Even though, because to me, the Doors weren't done because they were still going around as the Doors with Ian Astbury.
Right.
But then once Ray Manzarek died,
that's the end of that.
That was the end of that. So that's what bothers me.
Interesting.
Like I worry, I mean, a lot of the bands that we play and they still do really, really well, but it has like one original member.
Right.
But then like Tom Petty died suddenly. Like since last year, in January, David Bowie dies, and then Glenn Frey, and then from that point
Prince.
on, it just right. I mean, it freaks me out.
I was listening to a podcast called The Music Snobs. Have you heard these
Yes,
guys?
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were talking about Prince, the big Prince show. and one of the guys says, reading on the details of how Prince respiratory system is. I never thought of Prince having a respiratory system.
Exactly. You don't think of it because they're like
as a human
they're like
being,
idols
as a human
to,
body that's going to get sick.
They're not humans.
Yeah.
They're not supposed to die.
I know.
Not supposed to get sick.
I had a conversation the day after Petty died. I did a podcast. So I called up a buddy of mine who's a guitar player, big Petty fan, and I just taped the conversation unedited,
right?
Like old FM radio,
right?
And we were saying, man, the next 10 years.
Yeah,
is really gonna.
I know, and especially
like
it's like that golden age. We keep saying of like 67, 68. And it's just, and which really isn't old. And
No.
I mean, but honestly, and it really is just, a lot of them have had very hard lives. They abuse their bodies, I mean, not that any of us haven't or that we, but it's different, So I guess it catches up to you, but it just really freaks me out.
Yeah.
It makes me really sad.
But on the flip side of that, we just saw Ringo at the Beacon Theater.
Phenomenal.
2 weeks ago.
Right.
Whenever I've seen him a bunch of times.
Right.
So there's always the initial like, oh, look, it's him right there.
Right.
Once I got over that, and I'm like, all right, now let's watch the show.
Right.
I'm watching the guy just keep time behind the drums.
Right.
Not even breaking a sweat. I'm watching him sprint down from the drum riser back onto the stage, walk around the stage, sprint back up to the drum riser. I'm like, 77 years old.
Right.
The guy's jumping around
It's
like
true.
a maniac.
Right.
Or when we saw McCartney
at the Garden.
Barclays.
Right.
I was watching him do Golden Slumbers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I thought this, but I was like, he's at the piano. He's got the length of the drum solo to make it down from that riser,
right,
down to the front of the stage and put the guitar on. How is he going to do it?
And he did it.
And he just
with ease, right?
Rhodey comes over, puts the guitar on, he moves his shoulders around, he's ready to go. And I'm like, he looks like he's 30.
Well, that's because he's a vegetarian.
Right.
And that definitely helps your life.
Yes. If there's ever an ad for clean living, well, Ringo too.
Yeah.
All right.
So so that's the only thing that freaks me out.
Okay. So how has the role of disc
DJ
jockey changed over the years? And why did you know I was going to ask that?
Because everybody asked me that.
Oh, okay.
But that's no, but everybody asked that, but that would seem like the normal progression of what you would ask me.
Okay.
And I'm not saying not in a bad way.
Yeah.
But because it has significantly changed.
Okay.
So probably when I first started out, it was playing records, vinyl.
Yeah.
Whether they were 45s or albums, and answering your phones.
Okay.
And answering mail. But snail mail, as they call it now.
Sure.
Or lots of times that would be jail mail, because that would be the mail you would get, is like from guys, guys in prisons.
Okay.
Jail mail and snail mail.
Okay, so today, besides the fact that you're not playing vinyl anymore.
Right. Today, everything is digital. So everything's on a computer. Your commercials are on a computer.
Okay.
Your music is on a computer.
Okay.
You're answering phone calls. You're doing social media. You're blogging. Now we're doing podcasts. So it's changed a lot.
Okay.
And that is probably just as, if not more important than also doing the content of your show. So now it's like the big picture. So you really kind of learn to multitask.
Okay.
And it's really weird because I kind of think it's so vague to me back in the day when none of the social media or anything else existed.
Right.
But I remember being on the air and being busy. But now I think of like, how are you busy? you know?
Doing what?
Right. Oh, and answering email too, by the way, because I really like when listeners write me because it's the easiest way.
Sure.
You know, because sometimes people are like, oh, you never answer the phone. And I'm like, who has time for the phone? Just write me an email.
Right.
And I'll always answer an email, you know.
In a way, though, it's not unlike, I mean, I think about like the old days of FM radio. Like I have a bootleg disc of before the Let It Be album was the Let It Be album, it was going to be called Get Back. And I guess an advance copy had been sent to WBCN in Boston. And a DJ played the entire album on the air.
Okay.
And so there's bootlegs of that broadcast.
Right.
It's like one of the only recordings of that album in full. So it's like the songs, and then a guy breaks in with an ad for Chess King. And it just gives a sense of what FM radio used to be like, much more informal, much more sort of loose, and sort of talking directly to the listener.
Right.
And I get the sense that with social media, that still exists.
It keeps you connected to the listener.
You're still connecting
because even though things are very
directly.
different,
Yeah.
But now for me, there are more ways to connect other than just being on the air.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect
You know,
sense.
like I might say something on the air and then I might tweet something.
Yeah.
And then listeners will respond to me that way. Or like I love Twitter when an award show is on television.
Oh, yeah.
Because then I'll start being, and that's where, you know, the comedy scriptwriter comes back, goes
Sure.
full circle. So
Sure.
I'll be like snarky, thinking I'm being funny.
Yeah.
And then to see, oh, look who's retweeting me, or somebody will answer me, or keep in
Right.
touch with that. And
In
for
real
me,
time.
in real time. So for me,
Yeah.
Twitter is having a microphone when I'm not on the air.
Okay.
So I look at it that way.
Okay.
You know, on the flip of it, I do a lot of, you know, animal charity events and everything else.
Right.
So a lot of that, I use social media for that.
Okay.
Probably more so for that than, you know, like for me, Facebook, I will not do politics. I've really gotten away from a lot of the stuff I would do in the past.
Yeah.
Because it's just not worth it.
I don't do politics.
Can't do
on-
politics.
I'll like things that I agree with, but
Right.
I won't.
I can't.
comment.
No, you can't because people, it's not worth it to lose friends over. It's no purpose.
It serves no purpose at all.
Yeah.
You're not changing anything.
Nothing's going to change. And honestly, to me, if you have, because there are people who do nothing except, like, I don't understand people who just live on Facebook.
Yeah.
I don't get that. Like, for me, go volunteer somewhere or do some charity work, because it's okay to be on Facebook, but put your energy somewhere where you're doing some good in the world.
Right.
Putting your opinions on
If
Facebook
you're
or
that knowledgeable-
arguing,
If you're that knowledgeable,
go do something. Go
you
run
think
for
you're such an
local
expert,
councilman or
then
something.
Go do something about it, or keep a
Correct.
blog or something like that. I think Facebook is still kind of new enough. It's still like the Wild West that people think it's their blog.
But it's not. To me, it makes it look like, for me, if somebody does nothing except argue and pick fights with people, and I know people who are like that, and I've actually unfriended some people because it's like, honestly,
I've blocked
toxic.
people. I've blocked people.
Yeah, it's really toxic. Like, take that energy, because obviously you have a strong opinion, and do something with
Yep.
it. Do
Yep.
something, you know, in society. Go volunteer somewhere. Go,
Right.
you know, do something. And if you think you're so correct, then maybe you should run for, you know, local office.
Turn it into something.
Turn it into
productive.
something productive. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the problem I have. But anyway,
Okay.
other than that, I was a play, Mrs. Lincoln. But
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
So tell me about your animal stuff, mutts and stuff. Is that you?
oh, that's my podcast. Yeah, Maria's Mutts and Stuff.
Oh, okay.
That's my podcast.
All right. So
yeah.
when did you become such an animal advocate?
I don't know. It's at least, I don't know, 25 plus years ago or whatever. I don't
Okay.
know. I think the first thing I started to do was I was involved with the American Cancer Society. They would do their Dogs Walk Against Cancer
Okay.
when I was at K-Rock.
Yeah.
I would MC it for them. I don't even remember when that started, but I started to go to it and get involved. And at the time I had a pug and I would bring her,
Okay.
you know, and then I just also realized, like, hey, I have a microphone and use it for stuff other than talking music.
Okay.
So my thought was always, you know, kind of giving a voice to the voiceless.
Uh-huh.
And then I just really started to just really dive into the whole animal world, the
All right.
rescue world.
Okay.
So it's been 20, 25 years or whatever.
Okay.
And then, you know, people would approach me, hey, we're doing this benefit or we're doing this event. Would you MC it? Oh, sure. You
Yeah.
know, so now there are events that I MC every year. You know, we have a pet page at Q104.3.com. So
Yeah, yeah,
I'll
yeah.
put, you know, and I'll do that for any organization. If you email me your flyer, whether it's Pets with Santa or whatever, you know, I'll do that.
Sure.
I'll post it.
But you've always been a dog person, I guess.
Well, it's my parents' fault because I always loved dogs and my parents would never let me have one.
Ah.
So it's their fault.
Okay.
But,
But
you know,
look what it's turned into.
Well,
You're
exactly.
You're like known as like the dog
I guess.
person.
Well,
kinda.
thanks. But, and cats too. I
And a
want to
lot
be
of
fair.
classic rock
Yeah.
people are dog people.
Oh, yeah. And I also feel like it's a bit of giving back because you
Yeah.
have to. Because, I mean, I feel like I've been really blessed that I'm in
Yeah.
a career that I love. So how many people love to go to work? You know
Sure.
what I mean?
That's right.
So I love my job and I get to play music and, you know, push buttons as people who don't think it's hard do. It's
Right.
not hard. I mean, it's not a hard job. I don't mean it to say that like that, you know, I could be out in the cold digging ditches.
Right.
You know, like when I hear from all the iron workers, you know, those guys and all the union guys, and they're out in the cold and
Right.
building buildings. And I'm like, you guys are amazing. That's hard work.
Right.
You know, this is mental work. I mean, there are times I'll go home exhausted, but what job don't you, you know?
Yes, but it's hard to do well. And also you have to remember how happy you're making people. And I tell that to John.
Oh,
Like,
that's
you know,
nice.
Like this music makes
Right.
people so happy.
Because it brings back great memories. Yeah. It's true. And that's how, I mean, I even feel that way about this music. It
Sure.
brings back, you know, when I'm working, it's one thing, but if I'm out of here listening, like we just did the top 1043 classic rock songs that listeners put together.
Sure.
So I was listening to it on and off, and there were songs that like I haven't heard in a really long time, and it always would bring back something,
Yep.
you know, a feel good moment. So like I get it.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
Did I answer all your questions?
pretty much. I mean, I wanted to get into like the loftier thing about like music's role in society, like the classic rock
Or music just period?
music period. I mean,
I think music's a unifier.
It's
I still believe it.
Okay.
I think, but like you said, like Jill said, because music makes people feel good.
Yeah.
You can go to a concert and it doesn't matter who's standing next to you, whether you both voted for the same president,
Right.
or how you feel about, you know, whether you're married with 1,000 kids or you're recently divorced and you hate the opposite sex or whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter because you're both enjoying what's going on that stage.
Right.
And where in another situation, maybe you would never speak to the person next to you.
Right.
But when you're at a concert, it's totally different. Or you're at a show. You know what I mean? Like you're in the cutting room and you're in an intimate place and you're
Sure.
watching guys on stage. And I just think that music is just, it's a feel good thing. It's kind of like a drug in a good way,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I mean,
Because you feel good with it.
yeah.
You forget your problems. Like to
Yeah.
me, sometimes I just need to hear music
Yep.
and zone out, and it makes me feel better.
Yeah.
You know, and I was talking to a person recently who actually still cooks a lot, but used to own a restaurant.
Okay.
He's a really good cook. He's a chef. And he's a big fan of the station, whatever. And he said that he puts music on and it puts him in a different world and he cooks. And he could be chopping like a million different things.
Yeah.
You know, where for somebody who doesn't cook or, you know, like to cook, you see you see a dish and it has lots of chopped and sliced and you're like, oh my God, that had to take hours to do. But he said listening to music.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because I mean, I like to cook. And I was like, that's amazing because I do that too. Like I'll put on certain music, whatever, when I'm cooking something or baking.
Yeah.
And it just I can focus so much better when music is on.
I have to have music on when I'm driving.
Yes,
You
me
know.
too. It helps you focus.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
It's weird for me to be driving and not have
right.
tunes going. You know, it's just I see how like they announced the Grammy nominees
Ugh,
and I didn't know
whatever.
who any of those people are.
I dragged it out on the air
Okay.
because it really annoyed
Why
me.
did it annoy you?
First of all, Leonard Cohen, I think, is amazing.
Yeah.
Rock performance. In the rock performance, right? And I read
I
that
didn't even look at all the
category.
I just looked at like the best out, like the first
category
5
for
categories,
rock-
and I'm like,
yeah,
I know who
you don't
they
know
are.
anybody.
Right.
And my running joke is always, but you know what? 10 years from now, even whoever wins, you're going to say, who won the Grammy in 2018?
Right.
And you're not going to know. Nobody's going to know. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
that's my joke always. I kid with the guys at Z100. Like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, this band that you have on your poster. Yeah, who's going to know who that is in 20 years? But
Right.
look at my band. 40
Right.
years later, you still know who they
Right,
are.
right. Sure.
But yeah, so it was rock performance, and I ragged on the Grammys. I don't even know if I'll watch it this year because the rock performance was Leonard Cohen, who's amazing, but it's a rock performance. It was the Foo Fighters. It was Chris Cornell, and I was like, really? If Chris Cornell didn't die, would he be in this category?
Right.
No offense.
Right.
I mean, I love Chris Cornell, but really?
You could have given him right. Where
Why
was
didn't
the
you
love?
acknowledge him when he
Where
was
the love
alive?
when he could have used it? Sure.
And it was 2 other bands that I never heard of
Right. So to
that
your
I'm sure
point-
don't have guitars.
No, well, that's
And they
the-
probably just have keyboards
well,
or
again,
synthesizers.
As someone who plays the bass guitar, I look at these bands where the instrumentation is like 3 guys playing mounted bass drums.
Yeah.
And I go, what the hell's
What?
going on?
Right.
Who's
Right.
where are the rock stars?
Right.
You know, and I that's what I
Yeah.
worry about.
Yeah, me too.
And you know, is there a place for like 2 guitars, bass, and drums anymore?
Right. I think so.
Okay.
I think
But
so.
just not necessarily on the Grammys at
yeah, and
this
who
moment.
cares at this moment? Exactly. And but
cares?
who cares? That's what I decided. Because then
okay.
I was reading the other categories, like all the different rock bands
Right.
that were nominated. And like I said on the air, and I really strongly believe it, we're not going to see those performances, or it's going to be like when they say the announcers, like in the big announcer voice says, earlier this evening, the Foo Fighters and the Grateful Dead and Billy
Right.
Joel, blah, 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 all won a Grammy. Like,
Right.
really? whatever.
Right. That has more to do with TV.
I think so.
Okay.
I guess.
So I shouldn't worry.
Don't worry.
I mean, I'm
not worried.
I tell this to people all the time. I get, guys 65 years old coming over to me, music today, there's no good music like there was when I was a kid. I said, there's plenty of good music out there. There's plenty of great artists that you just need to like seek out. And I'll rattle off like a bunch of like indie bands that nobody knows about. I said, if you dig Zeppelin, you think nobody's doing that anymore, go check out X, Y, and Z or whatever. If you like Joni Mitchell, is this girl, Julia Comagere or whatever.
Yeah.
There's plenty of stuff. It's just not on the hit parade necessarily.
Exactly.
So,
but yeah, no, don't worry about it. I'm not worried.
If you're not worried, then I'm not worried.
I'm not worried. Maybe it's arrogant, but I'm not worried. And I'm not an arrogant person, but when it comes to that, I'm arrogant because it just annoys me.
Okay. All right. So you're confident.
I'm confident.
Right on.
You know what? Guitar centers and all those stores wouldn't exist. Think about that.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
And I think they do pretty well. And all the different companies wouldn't be making guitars anymore.
And guitar accessories and pedals and electronics.
And all that.
That industry seems pretty robust.
Yeah.
That's true. You have a point.
As long as we keep music education in schools, that's what counts too.
Right.
That's important too.
And keep it.
Gives an outlet to kids.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And we continue to push music as a thing in society.
Absolutely.
That people value.
Absolutely.
In general, not just in school, but just as a leisure activity.
Right. Or even as a healing. Look at musicians on call, right? Musicians on call that they'll go into a hospital and play music for somebody, for patients.
Oh, wow.
It makes a difference, by the way. Like, it really is so healing.
I think so too. Don't worry.
Okay.
There are other things to lose sleep over. Don't lose sleep over that.
Okay.
All right.
Good.
Do you feel all right? I don't want to end this with you being like bummed out.
No, I'm not bummed
All
out.
right.
If you're
No, I'm good with that.
If you're good, then I'm.
I feel pretty confident. Music's not going anywhere.
Excellent.
As long as I'm here for this music anyway, we're not going anywhere. Damn it.
All right. Cool. All right.
Is there anything that you still want to do that you haven't done? In this context of radio, or maybe not radio.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know. You mean career-wise? I mean, there are definitely artists that I'd like to meet that I never met, just for the sake. I mean, it's not like I'm going to have any big, long conversations, Although, when I met Brian May, because I, loved Queen, grew up with Queen.
Yeah.
And the guys here called me a geek because I totally geeked out on Brian May.
He's
right.
He's worth geeking out over.
But we follow each other on Twitter because he's really into animals.
Oh,
and he found out that I was, and I mean, it was really, yeah. Can I tell you the quick Brian May story?
Yeah.
So Brian May was on with Jim's show in the morning.
Okay.
And I knew he was in, so I came in early that day.
Yeah.
And I let him know that when Night at the Opera came out, I had the vinyl. I was in junior high, whatever. And I listened to that over and over so much. I mean, over and over. So he was like, so I guess you knew every word to every song. And I said, yes, I did. So, okay. So we were talking on and off. And then when he was leaving, Jim said, Maria does a lot with animals. He goes, oh, great. He goes, are you on Twitter? I said, yes. He hands me his iPhone and says, find yourself. Yeah, exactly. Right. Right. So now I'm like totally freaking out that I have Brian May's iPhone in my hand, right? His Twitter account open.
Yeah.
Find my name. I go, here I am. And he takes it and he goes, okay. He goes, I'm following you. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll follow you. And he looked at me and he goes, you think you will? And then he laughed and he tweeted at me, he called me his animal soul sister.
Oh my God.
I know, I totally geeked out and they made fun of me. It was like, it's okay. Yeah.
When I'd been with Alan Parsons for about a year, Brian May had some website.
Okay.
And I emailed him.
And he answered.
And he answered.
Wow.
And he said something to the effect of he said, my daughter is a huge Alan Parsons fan, so she's going to be really impressed that I'm talking to you.
Aww.
Anyway, take care or whatever. Like a quick.
Right.
But he, through the email, went out of his way to make me feel at ease.
He's amazing.
And I was like,
of course.
Because I was major.
But how kind is he? Yeah. I mean, he's just that's such a kind.
Yeah.
He has a good. He's really. He's
Well,
a
that
good
comes through in
soul.
the music too.
God,
I mean,
yeah.
his songs with Queen
Ugh.
were just like his voice. I mean, it's
know.
easy to geek out on that band. but,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
all right, so I'm not worried.
Don't worry.
You're confident.
I'm all right.
All right.
Yeah, I think it should be good.
Okay.
Music's around. It's not going anywhere.
Thank you so much, Maria, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. This
All
was
right.
fun.
Thank you.
Radio 418.
Yes, Maria Milito. I want to thank Maria again for being so gracious and for hospitality, inviting us up to the studios. You can listen to Maria middays on Q104.3 FM, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. You can also listen to her online at q1043.iheart.com. Follow her on Twitter at Maria Milito and Facebook.com/Maria-Milito. She's on Instagram, Maria Milito MM. And listen to her Maria's Mutts and Stuff podcast on the iHeartRadio app. And I want to thank my lovely wife, Jill, for joining me on this very special episode of the podcast. I love you, baby. Francesca, let me ask you something. What's the website for the podcast?
Radio418.com.
Where can people follow me on Twitter?
At John Mon.
Where can they follow me on Instagram?
John Montana.
But anything and everything that you want to know about me and what I'm doing with my music is at my website, which is what, Francesca?
JohnMontana.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much for listening to Radio 418.
I will see you on the next one.
Be well.